So thanks for the intro there, Colton. Just a quick introduction on my end here. My name is Amol, Sales Director here at Thought Farmer. I've been with Thought Farmer since 2011, and so I work with many communications and IT professionals who are in the process of buying intranets. And during the last close to 7 years now, I've worked with many organizations and understand, what makes a successful internet launch, and what are some of the pitfalls you may come across during your project phase there. So why this webinar? So in this session, we're going to review 5 of the primary objectives that I hear about the most. And for each objective, I'll show some examples on how our clients are using Thought Farmer to achieve those goals, but also I'm going to provide examples from us. So this is our intranet here at Thought Farmer. It's called Sparky. It's the central place for all of our content and is our primary digital workplace. Now, as you can imagine, we use our intranet a lot. During this webinar, I'll be showing examples of some of our clients, but I think it's also worthwhile to show you some examples of how we are using Sparky to engage our staff as well. All right, so for the first objective here, we want to communicate more effectively with our staff. So we hear this quite often. Now, for most organizations, the majority of digital communication is still done by email. There's one report out there that shows that employees are sending and receiving 105 emails per day. And I know for myself, that's pretty accurate. Now, that takes up a lot of our time. Studies suggest that a typical knowledge worker, email takes up 20% of their time. This is coming from McKinsey, the management consultancy group there. Now, if you are able to take some of that communication that is happening through email and actually move it over to a social intranet, other studies have shown that you can save 25 to 30% of time for those knowledge workers just by using a social intranet. So the first kind of area for this objective is around corporate news information. So this kind of leads into this example here from Dialogue. Dialogue is an architectural and engineering firm with over 650 employees or 650 employees and with offices across Canada. This is their homepage of their intranet. Really, the intranet homepage should serve as the front page for your organization. So at a very quick glance, your staff should be able to see what's happening across the company. And the way news information is approached within Thought Farmer is you have your global information and you have your local information. So global information is information you want to share with all staff. Really good candidates for this type of information or communication is all staff emails that are being sent out now. That is pretty low-hanging fruit. A lot of times those all staff emails are not really being consumed by your staff. So if you could take that information, move it to your intranet, the more likelihood of engagement you have on that type of information. Here we have Oxfam America. They are using their internet oftentimes to be able to share industry news. So industry news in their space, but also could be like employee events type of information as well. Now, one of the other examples of global information is executive blogs. This is always a great idea. So there's an example here from our client, Assiniboine Credit Union. They're based out of Manitoba. They have their president post on a monthly basis, especially after quarterly meetings or annually meetings where they're often sharing company goals. They'll often summarize those goals within this blog area. And if you simply enable commenting on a post like this, it's a great way for the leadership team to understand how that message was received in the organization, but also provides the ability for staff to share their feedback, right? So it provides them almost like a voice within the organization there, and that bottom-up type of communication, which a lot of organizations are looking to achieve. Now, group news. This is something that we take advantage of quite often on our intranet. So this is our intranet, Sparky. Last year, we were hosting our intranet conference, which we call Thought Summit. We set up a dedicated group on our intranet, and we had a dedicated news feed on there as well. So anytime we would have a check-in meeting, we would always post that as a news article within that group page. So it's great to be able to get to that information from that group page, but also you have the opportunity to be able to receive that information from your home page as well. So really the intention here is to increase the relevancy of the home page. So yes, you're getting all this kind of global information, like that corporate news information, but then you're getting stuff that is very localized for yourself, depending on what role you play in the organization, what groups you're part of, so that information on that home page is very much targeted. All right, so that was some examples of the first objective. Now we're going to move on to the second objective. So what we hear quite often is that we need a central space for all of our content. Now, this is the primary anchor for the reason why your staff are going to the intranet. They're going to the intranet to be able to get something done or be able to consume some type of content. So there's typical content systems you find in most organizations. You have your email, you have file servers, you have other SaaS platforms, and then you have stuff that's just living on people's desktops. Now, a really good opportunity for content on the internet is stuff that's usually living in a file server, which is your policies and procedures. Now, what we would recommend is that you would take that content out of a file and directly into a web page on the internet, just because it's one less extra click, it's one less extra download that somebody has to do to be able to get to that information, consume that information, and get that task done. The example that I'm showing now is from Central One Credit Union. And so they've set up a whole area called How Do I? So we see this pretty commonly within Intranet. So How Do I area, maybe a how-to area, and just simply maybe even called the policies and procedures area. But again, taking that content that's living elsewhere and moving it directly onto the internet as a source of truth for that type of information. Another good example of content that you want to move over is onboarding information. I really find that this is an area that if I was to first launch an intranet, I'd be tackling this, right? You know, onboarding for new employees. This is an example from us. When a new employee is starting up with our organization, the first thing that we send you to is this page on the intranet called I'm New, where's everything. Right, so some good information to know as a new employee. And again, you're just hoping to be able to increase that ramp up time. One example here as well is your information architecture, right? So the information architecture on the internet there is really important in regards to findability of content, right? Because the staff are going to be able to find content in a couple of different ways. One is through search, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but then the other one is through that information architecture. So starting with the main navigation, what's living underneath it. If any of you have gone through our platform of professional services, we often spend a lot of time around content strategy. So time around information architecture, which includes online card sorting exercises and tasks. And even if your internet has been running for a while, it's always good to do a review and just ensure that content is easily findable for staff. So again, you have content that's living on the internet. You want to make sure the findability of that content is easy. So yes, search. The other way staff are going to find content is through that search engine. I'd argue that search is probably the most important feature on the internet. So search, table stakes wise, it should index all content, all documents on the internet, but there should be some other subset features your staff should utilize as well. One of them being best bets. So if you're familiar with best bets, essentially what you're doing here is that when somebody types in a query on the search engine, oftentimes if it's a pretty common phrase, like it could be HR forms, you are very likely that those staff are looking for a couple of pieces of content for the internet, for content-wise there. So what you want to be able to do is make that easily visible for staff. So what you can do in the back end is say, okay, you know, HR forms, when people are searching for that, let's make sure that these 2 or 3 pieces of pages of content are showing up at the top. And it's very visible. So on our internet there, you can see that it's called best bets essentially. All right, one of the other things that we often hear is that when people are talking about search is that we want our internet search to work just like Google. Now the thing is that when you're searching on Google and you're searching on the internet, it is different type of search. It's searchability versus findability. A lot of times when you're on Google, you don't always necessarily care about where that piece of content is coming from. So the example is like, you know, if I'm looking for a banana bread recipe on Google, I don't care if that content is coming from the Food Network or from a food blog, as long as it's a good recipe. But on the internet, you're always looking for a unique piece of content. And a lot of times, you know, bits and pieces of information. That's where search filters come into play, right? So with search filters, you may know that it's a file that you're looking for. You may know who it's owned by, and you may know when it was posted. And so essentially, you can use those search filters to be able to kind of drill down your search results to be able to find the right piece of content there. The other kind of enhancement that you're looking for search is scope search. So scope search essentially allows you to search within a certain section of the internet. So if you're on the internet, for example, within Thought Farmer, what we have is something called a left navigation. So if you're in a section, you know there's actually a lot of content within this area of the intranet, and you're just looking for that one unique piece of content. So you can use that left navigation there and be able to kind of drill down specifically within this section. So scope search for myself, I find it to be very useful when I am looking for stuff on the internet. All right, so that was objective 1. Objective 2, so communication, content. Let's go on to the third objective. So our staff needs a digital workplace to connect and work together. So I always like to start with this quote from the former CEO of HP, because I believe it rings true for many organizations. Staff are using digital systems to collaborate. The challenge for companies is they don't often have control, and a real way to be able to capture that type of collaboration that's taking place. Now, within our company, I'd say that we are on the higher part of the bar graph when it comes to our internet usage. It is a primary source of collaboration for us. But that being said, we still have a lot of other areas that we can collaborate as well. Now, Sparky is the most important for my work. Now, on the internet, I find collaboration typically takes place in kind of 3 different buckets. The first bucket is around document collaboration. So this is the example from KWL. They're a local engineering firm here in Vancouver. Essentially what they're doing here is uploading their master specifications. So there's all those Word documents that are there, and they've enabled commenting for those Word docs. Essentially, if there needs to be any changes, they can just go right into that document page, be able to comment on it, and be able to update that source of truth for that particular specification. So document collaboration is the first bucket. The second bucket is around ideation. So just the ability for staff to be able to collaborate on new ideas or be able to share best practices. So the example that I'm showing now is MEC. So they have about 1,700 employees, retail organization. The interesting use case with this organization is that a lot of their staff are not in front of computers, right? They're kind of out in the field, at their stores, working with their customers there. But they still give the ability for all of those staff members to get access to the internet through kiosks within their stores. Now they have multiple forums, discussion forums that are running on their internet, and they talk about a variety of different things. The example that I'm showing now is just the ability for staff members to talk about product information within the internet. So as you can see, for an organization that sells products and services, this could be really important, right? Just because they're able to collaborate amongst across Canada there on specific products that they're selling in their stores. Here's another example from MEC. So this one is specifically for store managers. And what they're referring to here or talking about is inventory management, which is really important for retail organizations. So there's the topic, and then you notice these comments from different store managers providing their input from their specific stores. Now, another discussion forum that's useful is, again, around that onboarding use case. So here we have MD Financial Management. They're a subsidiary of the Canadian Medical Association, and this is centered around onboarding for new employees. So essentially what they do here is that with new employees, I think with any organization, what you'll find is they have a lot of the similar questions as other new employees. So they've set up a discussion forum where these new employees can ask their questions, and then people that are around for a while can go in there and be able to answer it. Now, what you're hoping to achieve here is a little bit of self-help, right? Because if you let new employees know that there is this discussion forum, that you might have a question, go in here first and see if it's already been addressed, right? So you kind of, again, increasing that onboarding efficiency there for those new staff members. Now, the third kind of bucket for collaboration is around process collaboration. So this is around current processes that are already within the organization. So static policy information on a web page, for example. So you may have like a company policy, you may allow commenting on that particular policy. And one of the more common scenarios that we get is somebody coming in and saying, hey, this is out of date, right? So the page owner would receive a notification, they'd be able to update that, and then you would have the most updated version available for everyone, right? So again, the 3 buckets that we see there is document collaboration, ideation, and again, collaboration on current processes in the organization. So that was the 3rd objective. Let's move on to the 4th objective, which is around celebration, right? So we want to celebrate all of the things that make us unique. So every organization, I would say, for their intranet, this is, again, an area of engagement, right? Because people like to be able to celebrate successes, customer wins, employee wins. The intranet is a great tool to be able to achieve that. Now, one of the ways of going about that is photo galleries, right? So photo galleries for sharing events, information. So here's one from Common Ground. They're a not-for-profit out of New York, where they're sharing information about community events. So Intranet is a good central place to be able to share this type of content. Staff events. So we do this quite often on our intranet. Each month we participate in a staff event. Staff events are organized by our office manager, Julie, and she sends out news articles asking us for suggestions. In the beginning of the year, we'll talk about office event ideas, and all of us will comment on it. And then the ones that get the most likes, for example, are things that will be scheduled for the rest of the year, right? So that's a good way to be able to, again, engage your staff using the intranet. Now, celebrating success. This is an example from Cummins, Western Canada. They did an interesting thing when it came to launching their intranet. Their HR team and comms team, essentially they went out to their 500 staff members for Cummins, Western Canada and said, hey, listen, if you got a great story to tell, let us know about it, right? And then what we'll do is each month, we'll post one of those stories within our Voice news feed on our intranet. So this is the first example of one, right? So this is a department celebrating their first year within the organization. So they did a little bit of a write-up on it. And then again, if you simply enable commenting on something like this, then you're gonna have other people coming in here congratulating this, this particular department. Employee spotlight. So again, celebrating staff. So here's an example from an organization called Sharaf Group that are based out of Dubai. They're also a retail organization. And in this case, this article is celebrating this employee that was nominated as Store Manager of the Year. So sharing successes is great for staff to be aware of all the good things that are happening and helping people feel connected with one another, especially when you have a dispersed workforce, right? When you have lots of staff in different areas, you know, how do you ensure that they feel connected with one organization? This type of celebration, right? So employee spotlights, customer wins, it's a great way to increase awareness, but then again, make people feel like they're part of one organization there. All right, last objective number 5. We need to do more to help our staff engage with us and each other. So what you're really looking for is something like this, right? Where your staff are feeling like they're connected with each other. And it's really about having the internet as a central place for most of your stuff and having staff be able to collaborate on that content and each other. So those 4 areas that we talked about already, right? So communication, we talked about content, we talked about collaboration, and then we talked about celebration of success. Those are all leading into engagement of your staff, right? And so the internet can be that primary kind of digital workplace tool that helps that engagement within the organization. So a bit of a recap here, right? So improving communication, central content repository, collaborate freely, enhance culture, and employee engagement. So what are some of the tactics there? So with improving communication, all staff emails to the internet, move that stuff over there. Executive blogs, having localized information through group news. When it comes to central content repository, your policies and procedures, I would definitely tackle this in regards of content and put it as content within web pages. Having an intuitive information architecture, right? Just ensuring that your staff can find content as quickly as possible and that navigation makes sense for your staff. And then finally, there is robust search, right? So not only, you know, being able to index content within documents and web pages, but allowing best bets, allowing for scope search, having really good search filters as well. Third objective there is collaborating freely, right? So document collaboration, collaboration around an idea, and then again, collaboration around a current process. Enhancing culture, so staff and community events, photo galleries, and celebrating success, right? Those are really good ways of being able to kind of enhance culture within the organization. One thing that I'll add in here as well is video, right? So a lot of times now we notice that organizations are even doing like lo-fi type of scenarios where they're just using an iPhone, going to a staff member and saying, hey, listen, here's 3 questions. You know, where was the last place that you went on vacation? Where did you grow up, right? And doing that on a weekly basis for people to, again, to be able to learn more about each other. And then lastly, there's employee engagement, right? So being able to collaborate on content and then connecting with other employees. So I think that this is usually what we find is an important aspect to any engagement on the internet. All right, so that was it. Quick and easy. Thank you so much for taking some time here. And yeah, we have some time for some questions if there is any.
Amazing, Mo. That was great. A lot of great examples there. A lot of great strategies too. Whether you have an intranet or maybe you're just sort of outlining your objectives for something new. Um, my question, just to kick things off, when you showed the staff event suggestions, what was your suggestion?
Yeah, a very Canadian suggestion, which was curling. Right? So, yeah, I don't think we've ever done curling though yet. So, I don't know if a lot of people would be happy, throwing rocks on ice there, but
Awesome. Um, yeah, another thing just to kick things off, say a company, we do a lot of staff emails, and we want to keep the staff emails, but we also want to pull people into the internet. Is there a strategy to bring folks from email to the internet?
yeah, I think a lot of times you're not going to be able to avoid people going to their email, right? Even my first behavior in the morning is to check my email. And then my second behavior is to go and check the internet, right? And so a couple of things that you can do is firstly kind of find this bridge, right? And so like notifications, email notifications is helpful. So if you have like a weekly digest, they can provide from your intranet to your email, just kind of giving a tease into like the popular pages on the internet. And so maybe it's just a page title, but what they would have to do from there is click on that page title, go to the internet to be able to consume all of that content, right? So you just want to be able to provide that kind of bridge there. And then also just don't do it by email anymore, right? So there's certain processes that you have, like the example that we have for Central One Credit Union is that any kind of updates that they have to their systems, prior to their internet, they were sharing those updates and saying, hey, listen, our email is going to go down for a half hour, or this banking system is going to go down for a half hour, and they were doing that via email. But what they decided to do was just totally stop doing that, and they started providing that information directly on the internet, right? So now people were kind of forced to go to the internet to be able to get to that information, and they just got rid of the old way, right? So there's a couple of different things that you can do to be able to kind of get people to stop looking at their email and going to their internet. But at the end of the day, what's happening here is that you're reducing somebody's email inbox, right? And so they're going to find value in that. And hopefully the content that you have available on the internet is engaging enough that they're going to want to go there all the time, right? And fresh content is important.
For sure, for sure. All right, Alicia's asking, what are some? You gave a few examples there of collaboration. Um, can you give us some more examples of how people are collaborating on the internet?
Right. I think a lot of times, like if you were to look at our own intranet and kind of what we're doing there is one thing that we do quite often is each one of our departments has its own kind of department page within the intranet. And then also from there, what we do is we have our dedicated news feeds for those departments. So anytime that we have like a stand-up meeting, like it could be a weekly one or a monthly one, oftentimes what we'll do is we'll post those meeting minutes directly onto the internet as news articles, and again, enable commenting, right? Because what happens oftentimes is that you'll find that some people just can't make that meeting. So they can go through those meeting minutes, see what happened, and then provide their input through the commenting, right? So that's a good way of kind of collaborating is on that type of information, those types of meetings. If you do microblogging on your internet, that could be a good way to collaborate as well. So maybe there's a quick update that somebody wants to share. Somebody asks about, where is the products and services brochure for our organization. And that could be an easy way for somebody to be able to provide that information as well. But those are a couple of things there. Also collaboration with your mobile device, right? People are not always stuck to their desk anymore. And so we have some organizations that have field workers that are out there working with clients, and they may need to be able to reach out to people that are at the head office, and they're using their mobile device to be able to do so, right? And again, maybe they're doing that through a discussion forum, through microblogging updates. Maybe they're taking a picture of something, whether offsite, then uploading that to the internet as well, right? So there's a couple of things that you can do there.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that example about the commenting in the meeting minutes. I feel like sometimes in the meeting I don't think of something until after, and then having that
Right.
place to, because I'm such an internalizer, having that place to share my thoughts of something I thought of after the meeting is a pretty cool way to collaborate as well.
You bet.
A couple of people are asking if we'll able to receive a slide deck of this presentation. I think we can make that happen, right, Amol?
Yep, absolutely. And there will be a recording available as well.
Awesome. Sounds great. Um, no other questions we can see right now, but if you do have any other questions, just feel free to send us a note. You got the contact information right there. So yeah, other than that, I guess let's wrap it up, and we'll give you back about I think 15 minutes of your time, which is awesome. And yeah, thanks so much for attending, everybody. Amol, thank you very much, and have a great day.
Have a great day, everyone. Take care.